Hey there, good afternoon. One thing I wanted to make a video about for a while, but I have not done it, that I've seen interviews on some podcasts recently, and not so recently, and I've been asked about it often when I'm discussing Tantra with people. Not just Tantra, when I'm discussing yoga with people. People always wonder how yoga is supposed to mean union, yoking, bringing things together, finding the similar thing inside me, inside you, inside the tree, inside, creating a connection between all of us. And yet the Yoga Sutras seem to talk about separating the Purusha from the Prakriti, the spirit from the body, the action of the being in a physical existence, from what we're supposed to be doing spiritually. And in Tantra, we always talk about, you're never not being in spirit. Your spirit is always animating this body and moving through things and doing the thing with you. So there's no separation. What I often tell people is, this comes up a lot with Ashtanga Yoga people, because where I am, usually when I'm in Mysore, people in Mysore are trying to figure out how the sutras fit in with this asana practice that they're doing there. Well, if you are doing Ashtanga Yoga as an asana practice, not the 8 limbs, we're not talking about that. Well, a little bit we're talking about that, but right this second, we're talking about the asana practice, the vinyasa, moving, breathing, and Surya Namaskara, standing poses, seated poses, all that stuff, primary series, intermediate series. If you're doing that, you're doing a Hatha Yoga practice. Hatha Yoga is the yoga created by a tradition called the Nattas, as a way to get the body in a perfect situation to receive and move and energy to flow freely through it, so that it can wake up the Kundalini. Hatha Yoga, if you read the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, if you read the Garanda Samhita, if you read these scriptures that we should be reading if we're doing Hatha Yoga, and if you're practicing Ashtanga Yoga, the asana practice, you are doing a form of Hatha Yoga. You should be reading the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Garanda Samhita, a couple other things like that. You should be reading the books written by, like by Patabi Joyce, by Iyengar has some great books, all these things that tell you how to use the asana practice to achieve a spiritual state of mind. You shouldn't be reading the Yoga Sutras. And I know a lot of people are going to be offended and be like, we go to all these classes to learn all this stuff when we're in Mysore and blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes. There is a certain level of a person who has done yoga enough. Done yoga means doing asana. Done asana enough to regularly achieve a state of yoga. Doing the yoga means doing the kriyas, doing the pranayama, doing all the things listed in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Granda Samhita and these types of tantric texts. Once you get to a certain level doing all that stuff, then when you read the sutras, it makes sense in a different level. But if you're starting out, and I mean starting out can be for 10 to 20 years, it doesn't have to mean like with the first few months. People think you're starting yoga after a few months, and then after you can do some of these poses, you're not a beginner anymore. If you're a beginner, in the Shastra, the Pradipika says, 12 years is the base. You can get it quicker if you're a certain level of practitioner, and it tells how long even, but 12 years is the base of what you're supposed to be doing as practice, with the asanas, with the pranayama, with the mudras, with the different kriyas that they prescribe in these shastra. That's the base to be able to understand the other levels of things. After 12 years, it's possible you can maybe get a little bit of that stuff. Because when you read the sutras and you're new, it seems like it's a dualistic philosophy. It's not trying to yoke anything together. It's trying to separate your spirit from your body, from being in this body, from being a certain way, to connection. Seems like a far-reaching thing when you read the Yoga Sutras. And it is. It can be. It is for most people. So don't read that. Read it some years later. Don't force yourself to do this at a level when you're not really ready for that sort of information. And also remember, if you're reading it in English or in your language, you're not reading it in the Sanskrit. You're not getting the actual meaning of all of the words. You're getting someone who has translated its idea of what they read when they translated it. And many words in Sanskrit, depending on the context of how they're used in a sentence, mean different things. So there's that. Another idea to think about also is, at the time the Yoga Sutras were compiled, they were not written by a guy named Patanjali. There is no proof that a person named Patanjali wrote them. They were compiled from teachings by this and compiled into one volume of 4 books, 4 padas, by Patanjali. Now, there's still no proof that that is the truth, but that's not the point I'm talking about here. They were compiled and put out publicly as a rebuttal to the Buddhism that was taking over India at the time. Nobody was interested in what we nowadays call Hinduism. People were interested in someone giving them teachings, and the Buddha gave teachings, and then the people he had taught went out and started teaching these teachings in several different schools also, mind you. There are like 37 different schools. There's not one set of Buddhist teachings. There's like 37 different, and by now, 2,000 years later, there's even more, most likely. So they were trying to use the teachings that were this closest to the Buddhist thing to pull people back to the Hindu fold. Buddhism is under the Hindu fold as far as the Hindu umbrella falls, because the Buddha was a Hindu. He didn't go out and create Buddhism. Buddhism is what they started calling it after he died, because his name was not the Buddha either. The Buddha is a title, because he had reached a state in his buddhi, his mind, that allowed him to be using that title. So they were trying to take them from the people who were falling into that those teachings and enjoying them and becoming Buddhists, which you don't really do, to pull them back onto the Sanatana Dharma fold, which is not a necessary thing. So this compilation that was put out is beautiful, and it has lovely things in it, and they're applicable to you in your mind more than they're applicable anywhere else. The second sutra says, Yoga Chittavritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. Now, if you're going, this is at a certain point. If you've done Hatha Yoga for years, 12 years, say, and you've gotten to the level where your mind gets calm from doing the practice, then you're ready to understand that yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind, because you are achieving a state of yoga regularly enough to understand what that means. Then you can read all the other things that are there and possibly glean a bit from them, the yamas and all that stuff. But it was trying to pull people back to the fold. So it's not necessarily something you have to understand. As a tantric practitioner, I almost never read the sutras anymore, but I did for decades. For 2 decades I read the sutras, trying to make them make sense to me. But application in life at that point is what was more important to me. So when I discovered that after I met Guruji and we started discussing those things, and I heard from other teachers as well, it made more sense to me. So don't think you have to read the sutras and understand them and complicate things in your mind. Yoga is supposed to be about calming your mind. So if you're doing the Hatha Yoga practices, read the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, read the Garanda Samhita. There are a few other books that you can read too. Read Krishnamacharya's books like the Yoga Makaranda, these kind of things. Patabi Joyce's book, because it has really great applications for some of this stuff in there too. It has great applications with the physical body in the asana section, stuff that I never would have learned from a teacher, because those people don't teach those things. Don't worry about the sutras so much. Just do your best to feel good and be a better person, or be as good of a person as you can be. And sometimes you're going to be a nasty bitch, and sometimes you're going to be crabby, sometimes you're going to be lovely. And slowly, with practice of all these things, that smooths itself out a little bit. Then you can start thinking about the sutras and how it applies to you and how it applies to your life. But remember also, these things were always taught from a teacher, a guru. which nobody likes the word guru these days, but I don't care. I have a great guru, so I want to use it properly. You don't just go read them. You get them interpreted for you. You read them with your guru. He'll read one verse, you read the verse, or she will read and you'll read. And if you don't understand, you say, what does this mean? And they'll explain it to you. That's how it's supposed to be done. Not supposed to be read and you try to figure out what it means on your own. Especially like me, I'm from the US. I'm not an Indian. I wasn't born and raised there. I don't have that instinctive understanding of the culture. It took me over 2 decades to kind of even get a glean of a little bit of understanding of their culture. Tiny bit of understanding I have. That's it. So you really need someone from that culture to interpret it for you. And there are so many people, if you're going to Mysore, there are so many people who are willing to do that. But you should ask your teacher first if they will do it. And if they won't do it, ask who they would tell you to go to understand that stuff. And then that's how it works. It's great. All right? All right. That's all I got. I will talk to you soon. Bye.